Welcome back, explorers. Brian here. Today we begin in 1896 with a man named William Crush, who was designing a publicity stunt to increase ticket sales. Crush worked for the MK&T Railway, which was down on its luck after the Depression of 1893, just a few years before. Casting about for an idea, Crush eventually talked the railway into an exhibition that was guaranteed to draw attention. He was going to run two locomotives into each other head-on. Why watching trains crash would boost ticket sales is anyone's guess. Crush admitted that he just thought people would want to see what happened. And oddly enough, he was right. On September 15, 1896, over 40,000 people showed up to Crush, Texas, the aptly named town created specifically for the event. In the afternoon sun, two trains built up a head of steam. They collided in the middle of town and exploded. Whoa! At least 2 people were killed, hundreds were injured, and the photographer hired for the event lost an eye from a flying bolt. In the wake of this disaster, ticket sales soared. The publicity from the train collision helped boost revenue 5-fold over the next few years and firmly cemented the Katy Railroad in East Texas. Just like the two trains, when cultures collide, the results are unpredictable. Today, let's talk about when cultures meet up, split up, and the impact of those events. Our learning goals are to analyze the process of cultural change, describe the processes of diffusion, convergence, divergence, and assimilation, and analyze the role that technology has played in the spread of culture. As we learned previously, cultural traits begin at a cultural hearth, or origin point. This hearth could be a family, clan, or tribe, even an entire city or civilization. From that starting point, a belief or behavior can spread in a variety of ways. Cultural diffusion occurs most commonly through trade. People have exchanged resources for thousands of years and exchanged culture along with them. Things like language, religion, and technology. Across Europe and Asia, merchants along the Silk Road passed regional items such as coffee, silk, and tea, but also brought ideas like Buddhism and Christianity, and technologies like gunpowder and the magnetic compass. Can you think of a more modern example of a people sharing their culture through trade? Pause the video to record an example that you know. Another way is through invasion. Okay, not that kind of invasion, but nations entering and conquering others. Many people have learned or been forced to accept cultural beliefs and norms from their conquerors. For example, peoples conquered by the Romans were forced to use Roman money so they could be taxed. Another method of diffusion is through colonization, which, believe it or not, is different from invasion. Colonizing means actually settling in a new land. As Alexander the Great conquered Persia, he left behind Greek people to rebuild and spread culture by constructing temples dedicated to Greek gods and using the Greek language. As with many colonizations and conquests, those who were conquered not only lost land and power, but also lost their cultural distinction. This happened when the Spanish Empire colonized the New World. They imposed the use of European manufactured goods, the Spanish language, and Christianity on the First Nations of Central and South America. This process, called cultural assimilation, happens when a minority group, by coercion or by choice, comes to resemble the majority group of the society they live in. The last method of diffusion is simply through communication. The newest and most influential manner of cultural exchange is communicating online. But since the dawn of civilization, the written word has been sent from one place to another. Inventions like the quill, printing press, telegraph, typewriter, telephone, radio, television, and computer have all had an enormous impact on the culture of people who adopted them. Today, we have an unprecedented ability to connect and share. So let's think about this. How have new communication technologies made it easier to learn about people and cultures than it was for your parents or grandparents? Add a response to your lesson guide now, but talk to your family later about their experiences. Maybe you said that your parents have a set of encyclopedias they used to read before we could Google things like you do. Throughout history, many cultures have come together or converged and shared beliefs, behaviors, technologies, ideas, and goods. In the last 150 years, one of the main activities attracting people across the world is sports. Every year, the American Football Championship, the Super Bowl, attracts about 100 million American fans. And outside the U.S., there are roughly 40 million additional viewers who watch the game, which is broadcast in American English. This event has gone global, spreading the American variety of English to people all over the world. Now, 40 million may seem like a lot, but it's peanuts compared with the FIFA World Cup, which draws over 1 billion viewers during the final game. Throughout the world, soccer is shared, from gripes over rules to the thrill of a team score, from the spirit of competition to the feeling of connection over a shared cultural experience. And sports aren't the only connection which can bind seemingly different people together. Throughout the 1980s, cartoons were a mainstay of American life. Due to high demand, many animation studios outsourced work to Japan. The unique style of Japanese animation pushed many people from America and Europe to explore other animated content from Japan. An explosion of interest in anime, manga, and Japanese-driven stories was created through a desire to know the people behind the successful Saturday morning cartoons, and led to cultural convergence through anime and manga. This can be seen by not one but two anime-specific on-demand channels, Funimation and Crunchyroll, which catered to that global, culturally convergent audience. Do you have any culturally convergent hobbies that got their start in another country? Maybe, like me, you enjoy karaoke, another Japanese tradition. The thousands of tiny islands spread across the vast Pacific were settled by island-hopping explorers originating in Taiwan. Isolation between groups after settling distant islands led them to develop different cultural traits, despite having common ancestors. This process is called cultural divergence. New Zealand was settled by the Maori, a tribe of warrior voyagers. Among them, one group, called Moriori, left for the Chatham Islands around 1500 CE. But the Chathams were colder than New Zealand and not great for farming. The land naturally provided enough food for those that made the trip, so the Moriori quit farming and survived by fishing, hunting, and gathering. The hunter-gatherer lifestyle typically doesn't provide enough food to support the growth of large populations. The Moriori remained small in number and did not develop weapons of war. They lived in harmony with the land and each other, and even created laws which protected their peaceful way of life. Based on what you've learned about the Moriori, what caused them to diverge from the cultural traits they shared with the Maori? Pause the video one more time to answer in your PDF. Maybe you said that living in different environments led them to develop different ways of life. In 1832, the Maori invaded the Chatham Islands and killed or enslaved almost all of their distantly related tribesmen. In this case, cultural divergence resulted in the destruction of one group when they converged once again. Throughout human history, cultural traits have been shared and traded among peoples. Occasionally, the splitting up of cultures can cause disastrous consequences, as can the attempt by some to minimize or erase the culture of another. The Internet's power of communication and connectivity has served to greatly broaden the spread of former regional secrets and to prevent cultural loss. As we continue to study the world, one of the most important features that a geographer can keep in mind is the way that humans connect and share their way of life with each other. What cultural traits are common in the town where you live? Where did they originate? And how did they spread to people like you? These are just a few questions you can ask to help make the world around you come alive. Remember to ask questions, be curious, and until next time, keep exploring.
Hey, hey.